Hi, I'm Nick Palmisano.
And I'm Matt Finney.
And this is the Bad News Network. Court packing is back on the menu, boys and girls, thanks to Senator Ed Markey, Representatives Jerry Nadler, Hank Johnson, and Mondaire Jones. Or as I like to call them, four partisan hacks with a lust for power and no desire to lead America. Several of you asked us to try swearing a little less, and I'm going to try to respect that. But for now, I need you to put your fingers in your ears. These guys can all the way off. All the way off. I'm a pretty moderate guy. I rarely get emotional about politics because I know they are all full of shit. And I remain constantly amazed that so many Americans are passionately on one team or the other because it's so very obvious how they manipulate us that I just don't understand how anyone takes these people seriously. Nevertheless, this is an issue that really grinds my gears. The goal here by these sticks is not court reform as they're trying to paint it. It's a full power grab to fundamentally change the country and ensure that no one but them will ever be in power for all time. This is some straight up Putin shit. And I know what you're gonna say. But Mitch McConnell didn't let Garland in and then squeezed Barrett in. Got it. Dick move. Shrewd politics. Democrats would have played it the exact same way, and you're lying to yourself if you think otherwise. They literally have done the same thing in the past. But whatever your emotions are about that, they still played inside the rules that are generally accepted since 1869. Not even the notorious RGB thought adding seats to the court was a good idea. So why is this such a big deal to me? The Supreme Court is all that we have left. Our legislative branch is an embarrassment. 3/4 of all Americans disapprove of the job they are doing. So only 1 out of 4 Americans don't think these people suck. And those people are probably the ultra partisans from whatever party happens to be in power at the time. The presidency has its own problem. To start, it's polarizing. Since they began approval polls, only 4 presidents have maintained an approval rating above 60%. Eisenhower, FDR, Bush Sr., and Kennedy. But recently, Americans are now doubting the validity of our elections. A lot of people do not even believe that President Biden was elected properly. They believe the Democrats cheated. I've said over and over again that I believe that not to be the case for many reasons, but the fact of the matter is that many Americans lack confidence in our system now. And that is a real problem. Civilization works because we all agree it works. Money is worth nothing unless we say it is. Laws are meaningless unless we all agree they have meaning. Property is arbitrary unless we opt to respect property rights. And we all agree to this stuff because in general terms we believe it is fair. We believe that it is imperfect, but that on the whole the system works pretty well. In fact, it was this conservative Supreme Court that checked all of the president's attempts to challenge this election. Why did they do that when 3 of them were brought on the court by President Trump? Because the justices are not politicians. They have almost to a person held themselves to a higher standard. That doesn't mean you need to like them personally, but they are jurists first. If the Democrats pack the court, force the institution to become a political one instead of a legal one based on the Constitution, we're going to have major issues. I believe this will pour gasoline onto the belief that the Democrats are cheating the system. Because in this case, they kind of would be. I truly believe this could lead to extreme violence, especially as Democrats will push case after case through the courts to their favor, as the institution would now simply be an extension of the legislature, answerable to the party and the public instead of the Constitution. If the Democrats do this, I believe it will kick off a very dark time in our nation's history, in a moment when we need to be rising up to take on the challenge of a new post-pandemic economy. In short, if this goes through, I will be wicked pissed. Now, once again, I do want to remind everyone that just because these 4 dipshits are pushing this America needs a new king and the king is the Democratic Party agenda, that doesn't mean the Democratic Party is embracing it. Speaker Pelosi came out today and stated that she will not move this to a vote. The president, for his part, seems to be using a stalling technique, allowing a bipartisan commission to study the issue. Studies take time, and he'll likely be out of office by the time it's complete. But you just never know. Democrats, you have the House, the Senate, and the presidency. If you're trying to lead America rather than just trying to dictate to America, that really ought to be enough.
What do you do with over 1 million metric tons of treated radioactive water that you need to get rid of? If you're in Japan, you just dump that shit right into the ocean. This week, Japan announced plans to release water from its destroyed Fukushima nuclear power plant in the next 2 years. Do you want Godzilla? Because that's how you get Godzilla. Japan. Godzilla has been kicking your ass in theaters since 1954. Please don't make this a real thing. We don't have a giant monkey to fight against it, and the closest thing we had died a long time ago for our sins. Dicks out for Harambe. In 2011, the Fukushima Daiichi went into catastrophic failure after the country was hit by the earthquake and the tsunami. It was classified as a level 7 international nuclear event on the scale of Chernobyl. The current plan to release the water will happen in 2 years, as it's going to take 2 decades to complete. As you can imagine, people aren't super pumped to have former radioactive water pumped into the ocean, specifically local fishermen and other neighboring countries like South Korea. Japan's Prime Minister Yoshihide Suga, aka Suga, said, "We have decided that guaranteeing safety far above and beyond the accepted standard and ensuring the entire government's best efforts to prevent reputational damage means releasing it into the ocean is a realistic option." Which is a weird way to say, I have no idea what else to do. But don't worry, Japan has promised that water in the tanks will not go into the ocean as is, but will be treated to remove most of the radioactive material. That sure does a lot to inspire confidence. I guess it's nice of them to wait until most of the radioactive material is removed instead of dumping the untreated water into the ocean, which they did in 2011 after the plant failed. It's estimated that 18,000 terabecquerel, a scientific measure I will never need to know, of radioactive cesium-137 flowed into the ocean until 2013. Now, I'm not a scientist, so I have no idea if this is going to affect the environment negatively or not. I will tell you that the chances of me swimming anywhere near Japan are f***ing zero.
Darius, who holds the Guinness World Record for being the world's largest rabbit, has been stolen. Darius has held the title of world's most giant rabbit for 11 years, stretching at a hair over 4 feet. His owners have posted a reward for any information pertaining to the theft of the giant rabbit. Anyone who's willing to snitch could get €1,000. Sounds like a lot because it's foreign, right? Well, that's only about $1,300 US. I'm not gonna lie, that seems a little low for the world's largest rabbit! Lady Gaga was offering $500,000 for her dogs, and they are regular as fuck.
There is a lot of ugliness in the world today. COVID, racism, global warming, and people chewing with their mouth open. Disgusting. But man, is science looking like a snack. Scientists in Geneva are currently laying the groundwork for future scientific breakthroughs that they are hoping will change the world. The Geneva Science and Diplomacy Anticipator is hoping to make huge leaps in issues like climate change and space exploration. GESDA was created in 2019, and on Tuesday they presented plans for a summit in October that would bring hundreds of the brightest minds together to discuss big picture issues like the future of humanity. A big part of the conference is going to help map the relationship between scientific breakthroughs and their impacts on society and the world. In other words, how to translate all the smart people stuff to the stupid people so they know what the science is going on, and all the witchcraft. Geneva is also home to CERN, which holds the world's largest and most powerful particle accelerator called the Large Hadron Collider. What does this machine do, you ask? Well, the Large Hadron Collider produces 2 high-energy particles that travel at almost the speed of light in the opposite direction. And once the particles are going fast enough, the scientists make the particles collide with the hopes that the event would help us come into contact with some parallel dimension. So a little more complex than the photosynthesis stuff we learned in middle school. If we were able to open up a doorway to a parallel dimension, I'm assuming that the dimension's Jet Li would then be the first person out and would immediately go on the hunt for our Jet Li, who we must protect at all costs. The former CEO of Nestle, Peter Brabeck, who is now part of the head of GESDA, used the coronavirus as an example on how the organization like GESDA could use science to help predict disasters like this before they happen. Citing one of the biggest issues with the relationship between science and diplomacy is that science moves a lot faster than diplomacy. GESDA's big project is to accelerate decarbonization of the industrial process in the next decades, which they are calling Manhattan Project type research. Pro tip, if you want people to embrace science, maybe don't reference the time we figured out the best way to kill millions of people with one bomb. They've also volunteered to try and fix politics by accelerating and colliding two politicians inside the Hadron Collider. Not that it changes anything, but purely because the world is sick of politicians, and this is an event we can all get behind.
Apparently, the nickname Sleepy has trickled down to all of the White House staff. An online gamer was somehow able to sneak into Jen, Let's Circle Back Saki press briefings and even ask some questions. A person with the online profile Casey Lego Montagu presented credentials from the bogus White House News, which the actual White House must have thought was a real thing because they let her walk right through the door. I guess she had a pretty regular profile name since most kids are just something something ballsack 69, so maybe the professionalism is what confused them. The imposter is believed to be an active member of the Roblox community, which my kids are a part of. It's a bunch of nerds that get online to hang out with their friends as Lego-like people. So if these are the people who can sneak into the White House, Russia's nerds are going to kick our f***ing asses. Guys, at least be Call of Duty nerds. Roblox. Come on. The gamer who did not want to reveal his or her true identity, and in the same article they said she, so that helps narrow it down to half of them. Good job, writers. But if online gaming has taught me anything, it's that dudes will pretend to be girls just to get free stuff, so who knows? Good thing Lego Montagu wasn't a spy or foreign assassin and is just someone who likes journalism and Roblox. To add insult to injury, the White House was already limiting the amount of people in the briefing room due to COVID, so there's absolutely no reason this person should have made it that far. It's good to know the security of our nation's most important building doesn't stand a chance against an army of out-of-shape Mountain Dew drinking, Cheeto-stained finger army of nerds.
Bernie Madoff, the evil mastermind behind the biggest investment fraud in the United States history, died this week at the age of 82. After ripping off thousands of people to the tune of $65 million, Madoff was sentenced to a 150-year prison sentence, which he was serving when he died. In early 2020, Madoff requested that a judge release him from prison because he was in the end stages of kidney disease and he was too old for a transplant, to which the judge replied, "Bro, what are you smoking? You owe me money." But that wasn't the worst thing for old Bernie. He said he lost all connection with his family, including his wife and two sons, who have now passed away. I don't know if this is one of those rest in peace or fair wind situations, so I'll just have to say, later, Bernie.
You guys remember a long time ago, last month, when that giant cargo ship got stuck in the Suez Canal and the only thing they could do was try and dig it out with a tiny excavator and wait forever? Well, while that ship was stuck, 10% of the world's trading was at a standstill and held up $9 billion of the global trade a day. Well, while that ship was stuck, 10% of the world's trading was at a standstill and held up $9 billion of global trade a day. That's a pretty penny. Now that the ship has been dislodged, people are wondering who's going to pay for this. Naturally, all the fingers are pointing to the owner company of the Ever Given, the ship that got stuck. Makes sense to me. You f***ed up, you should have to pay for it. I mean, all you guys had to do was get a captain that could sail a ship in a straight line. Why would you try some new fancy moves like veering left or right when straight down the middle has always worked? Instead, they got a captain who decided to see if they could Tokyo drift a giant cargo ship. The Suez Canal Authority, who runs the canal, is pursuing almost $1 billion in compensation against the ship, which included $300 million for a loss of reputation. I think the real loss of reputation was the fact the SCA only has one tiny-ass excavator to get a ship unstuck. Hopefully with this money they can buy a second super tiny excavator to help out the first one. I mean, if I had that much money, I would have an army of tiny excavators and no one could stop me. Seriously, in regards to the loss of reputation, they did this to themselves. The captain of the Ever Given said he was disappointed in the decision in the SAC to pursue the ship for money, which definitely sounds like someone who doesn't want to get sued or fired over sucking at their job. Let's say you run a restaurant. You don't wash your hands and then touch some food, getting a bunch of people sick. That would be your fault. All you had to do was wash your hands, or in this case, just keep the ship straight. That ship kept me from getting my Sharknado box set, so here's to hoping I get some of that $1 billion. After all, my reputation's been hurt.
48-year-old Kimberly Potter appeared yesterday in court to officially be charged with second-degree manslaughter for the shooting of 20-year-old Duante Wright during a traffic stop. Potter, a 26-year veteran of the Minneapolis Police Department, was assisting in a traffic stop for an expired tag that revealed a warrant for a misdemeanor firearms charge. During the stop, Wright struggled with the arresting officer and attempted to flee in his vehicle. Potter can be seen trying to help her partner on the body cam. She began to pull a handgun and then proceeded to yell, "Taser, taser, taser," after which she fired a single shot into Wright. Potter then exclaimed, "Holy shit, I just shot him," and Wright sped off in the vehicle and died shortly after. This sparked a series of protests during an already tense time in Minneapolis, with Derek Chauvin's case drawing to a close. Wright's family has stated that they are striving for full accountability and are pursuing aggressive prosecution of Potter. If guilty, Potter could face up to 10 years in jail and a $20,000 fine. We'll have more on this story as it unfolds.
Derek Chauvin has pled the fifth in place of testifying in front of a jury. This is a standard for most defendants as they face intense questioning by lawyers that yell like Al Pacino and risk undermining their own cases. Both the prosecution and the defense have rested their cases, and it is reported that the jury will hear their closing remarks on Monday. In case you've been living under a rock for the past year, Derek Chauvin is the former Minneapolis police officer charged with killing George Floyd by kneeling on his neck for 9 minutes. If you have in fact been living under a rock, don't feel embarrassed. Also, maybe get the rock off your back. Go back now while you still can. It's not better out here.
In a truly shocking twist of irony, the Biden administration has implemented the exact same immigrant holding procedures as they lambasted Trump for 4 years. Media outlets have reported that they have been blocked from touring the actual facilities and have been directed to report on certain buildings as directed. In border towns in Texas, reports have become more concerning as residents are asking police if it's okay to use lethal force to defend themselves in their homes. Sources say in the past, a few migrants walking through town would be totally normal sights. The present situation sees droves of people coming through their towns at an unprecedented rate. That has raised concerns about safety and confusion as to whether or not it's a parade. Utter chaos ensued when a South American marching band crossed the border unannounced, causing processions of impromptu floats and banners to follow. As of now, the Democrats are simply responding with canned circle-back answers. We continue to hold our breath for the moment the mainstream media treats the Dems with the same amount of ire for these policies as they did with the Trump administration.
Teacher salaries have been a hot topic for a long time. Many people feel teachers don't get paid enough for the work they do and the abuse they suffer at the hands of our youth, especially our middle schoolers. This week, one North Carolina teacher decided to try and make a change. So like any of us, he decided to try and rob a Mexican drug cartel. 40-year-old Barney Dale Harris was a beloved Spanish teacher and basketball coach at the Union Academy Charter School in Monroe, North Carolina. He, along with his brother-in-law, Stephen Alexander Stewart Jr., broke into the mobile home of Mexican drug cartel member Alonzo Beltra Lara and waited for him to return. When he did, a firefight ensued that resulted in the death of Harris and Lara. The DEA arrested Stewart later at his home. They recovered at the scene $7,000 in cash and 1.2 kilos of cocaine, or roughly $167,000 total. Which is to say that for just one moment, teachers would have been getting paid a satisfactory wage. The school, upon learning that Harris was killed, planned a number of events and displays celebrating the life of their beloved teacher. That was until someone asked them point blank how they felt about celebrating the life of a deceased drug thief. The activities have since been canceled and Harris has been removed from the school's website. The school was not available for comment. But if he had lived, I really hope Harris would have finished the murder of that drug dealer with class dismissed. In other news, that was 5 minutes from Tom Hunt's house.
Tragedy has struck as a FedEx facility in Indianapolis has experienced a mass murder as a lone gunman apparently entered the facility, killing 8 people and then killing himself. Police do not yet have clues as to the motive of the killing, and no information has been released on the killer himself. More on this story as it evolves. Thursday marked the anniversary of the Boston bombing at the Boston Marathon, and I just wanted to send my love out to everybody in Boston and all the people who supported the Boston Strong movement, and to the Boston bomber, go f*** yourself, and to the Supreme Court, or whichever court is handling his case right now, I don't remember, but just give him to us. We'll take care of him.
And finally, in Florida Man news, Volusia County deputies had a run-in with the infamous Jason Bourne this week. They were called to a home on the report of a suspicious person on the premises Monday evening. They arrived to find 42-year-old George Prosock sitting in his Lincoln in the driveway with a woman in the passenger seat. When deputies asked Prosock what he was doing, he initially told them he was looking for a hose to flush out his eyes. He was also looking for Steve. Just Steve. No one named Steve lived in the house. Police discovered that Prosock had a warrant out for his arrest for violating pretrial release and proceeded to try to arrest Prosock. After being less than cooperative, police took Prosock to the ground, who then grabbed one of the officers by the vest and the foot so they couldn't get up. In a shocking plot twist, the officer deployed his taser, but Prosock pulled the prongs out and ran towards his car. He was then tased a second time, and again he managed to rip the prongs out and just keep going. This time the deputies hit him simultaneously with a taser and pepper spray, which they later entered into their report as being completely ineffective against Prosock. Feeling pretty invincible, Florida Man began to charge one of the female officers, who promptly drew her firearm. Prosock hit the brakes, ran around the car, and laid on top of the female passenger who had complied with the police and was laying on the ground. He then shouted that he was a special agent and this was his queen, to which police responded, "Jesus Christ, it's Jason Bourne." The female passenger alerted the police that Jason Bourne was in fact on meth. After more deputies arrived, Prosock was finally taken into custody and is now facing 2 counts of battery of a law enforcement officer, resisting an officer with violence, and acclimation into the Blackbriar Special Agent Program. And with that, I'm Nick Palmisano.
And I'm Matt Finney.
And this is the Bad News Network. Our news is at least as bad as the news you're getting already, and folks, be excellent to each other. And, no, that's it. As always, you can get 25% off at rangerup.com when you use the code BNN. And of course, always check out Nick and Matt on OnlyFans to see if we've posted anything.